Hello everybody, and welcome to Amateur Cast, where I get in you and your replays to be casted for my entertainment, and hopefully to help you improve a little bit as well. Today I will be joined by Rick, and we're going to be going into a TVT. So without further delay, I'm going to go let him introduce our first player.
And that's right, I'm your other co-host, personality, other person talking.
Of some nature.
Rick. What? Oh, yes, of course. And let's not forget about Yohan Sebastian, the crab, the third Esquire, Preston, who is in the blue trunks, our blue Terran. And then across from him, Funky.
I hope you know that I have no idea what you're talking about when you made that reference there, by the way.
No reference whatsoever, don't worry about it. And as you can tell, this TVT is off to a crazy start as Yohan decided to skip the upstairs and decided to go downstairs and is putting the supply depot in the natural. Because
downstairs is where it's at.
That's right.
Weird positioning on the barracks. Usually want it touching the supply depot. That's probably because of an add-on. It's going to be added on. That would have to be my assumption. I really not sure what's going on here for Yohan. My best guess is that we're going to be seeing an early CC because of the positioning of the barracks in the supply depot. But really, you don't need to have them down there in the first place. You might as well have them up in your main base where they're not able to be sniped so easily.
Okay, I'm going to blow your mind, and by blow I mean this is going to sound really dumb, but I think he put that thing down there to get the Reaper just a little bit closer to the base.
That is an idea, I suppose. Assuming that he is going for Reaper Expand. Oh, does he have gas yet? Yes, he does have gas. So, yeah, he could be going for Reaper Expand, though I have seen...
have gas.
I have seen some players trick me into thinking they're going Reaper Expand, and then they go something like Reactor into CC, which isn't... Oh, speaking of Reactor, we're going to be seeing Reactor drop down at this point. So my best guess is this is probably going to be hitting out a couple of Marines so that he can take a natural expansion, and really that doesn't surprise me considering the fact that he is having his buildings down here in the first place.
Yeah, I think the name should have been switched because Funky's going to do a little bit more standard. He's putting out that Reaper, and I think he's going to drop down a command center relatively quickly. Yep, there's that SCV going to the natural.
It looks like it's saving up his funds for right this second. Ooh, are we going to be seeing it? Looks like it wants to, but not enough funds yet. Oh, there we go. Command center on its way. Like it should be. Yohan is going to be going for in a tech lab, and I don't leave that walls off, so he's going to need another supply depot to get that taken care of. I believe this is a full wall off.
This is, and the Reapers finally get out and hopefully shoo away the Reaper. There we go.
He's going to get a couple of pot shots on the SV, though, which is a little bit annoying for Yohan. But really, it's not like we're having to worry about anything from Punky's side of the thing. Like you said, he's not really doing anything out of the ordinary, going just safely into a reactor for double marine production, as well as getting his factory out, which means we'll probably either be seeing siege tanks or up into starport tech so that he can get his medevacs out.
Speaking of which, I believe Funky getting those 2 Marines, but he's got that factory right next to the barracks. I wonder if he's going to lift that thing up and place the factory down to get some more Hellions out.
It's also a very possibility. Could also be going into Widow Mines there, too. Not that I necessarily would condone it. I don't think Hellions are the best unit in the matchup. They're fairly decent in the early mid-game when when you don't have too many Marauders in the composition, which you normally do see, especially in Terran versus Terran with the Bio versus Bio matchup. So you'll see heavy Marauder counts in late game, which is one of the reasons why Hellbats and Hellions aren't normally seen in the matchup in general. So they're good in the early game, but I think that a lot of other things are better.
Well, better for nothing. That factory went down, and indeed, double Hellion production is on its way. While Yohan, I think, might have just duped Funky and is not even putting down a command center yet. Matter of fact, he's only mining gas 2 at a time on his first base there.
Yeah, I feel like that's a saturation problem that he just forgot that he had one missing on each side. The CC is really weird because of the positioning of his buildings, like I've been saying, it feels like you should be seeing a CC coming down, and there it is, but it's still coming up super late. And it's going to get scanned right away, too, which is a little bit unfortunate for Yohan.
Yeah, a little unfortunate indeed. And looking at the SCV count, Johan is down by 10 SCVs right now, and that's a hell of a dip, I'd say.
Yeah, it's definitely a big dip, and also taking into consideration the fact that the natural expansion's up, we're going to be seeing double SCV production, which means, well, yes, he has double SCV production. I thought I was looking at Johan, I'm like, he only has a single SCV production. But with a double SCV production, he's going to be able to get up onto those harvesters a lot quicker, and that's not even taking into effect the mules.
Yeah, but I mean, two orbitals already. I think Funky's in just a great position, albeit probably should get some more gas going. And there are the mules dropped.
He's going to have his bunker not filled, though, which is a little bit weird.
Well, they're just standing around it just in case. They're admiring the craftsmanship of that bunker.
The bunker is a piece of art, a work of art, for lack of a better statement. We're already seeing Yohan going up onto siege tank production as well, or not as well, just is. No starport yet from him. He could use to drop that down, but he is a little bit low on the funds because of, hey, he has quite a bit of a deficit in the harvester count. I think that's like 15 right now, which is just not good for him to be in.
Yeah, this isn't looking so super hot, but I mean, I guess army supply is probably in favoring of Johan just a wee bit.
Nope, Funky has got it. About 7 supply.
You know what? The siege tanks really matter. And we're about to see that, I think, unless he scans ahead. Or...
He should scan ahead. He really should scan ahead. I'm chasing the scan. Oh, it's in the main base. It's in the main base of Funky. Yohan just seeing what's going on. Starport is going to be up from Funky, which means that he'll have medevac production on its way. He does have a reactor on the barracks so that he's able to do the switcheroo that you see Terrans do often.
Yep, and two more not bunkers, but barracks have gone down, so this is going to be straight up bio versus bio with heavy siege tank play.
Which is just kind of... It used to be, actually, back in the time where you see a lot of siege tanks, and really, they're not used very much in the matchup anymore. Siege tanks had a huge falling out. I think siege tanks are still fairly good, but a lot of people have been foregoing the siege tanks for Widowmine production, and I have talked about siege tank versus Widowmine production before, and I feel like siege tanks are just the more safe and the more stable of the two. Widowmines, you have to get up on the units of your opponent, and sometimes that means you end up losing a lot of units in the process, while siege tanks stay in the back and they shoot off and they get a lot of damage done. Just like that.
And we have a drop going down, and very smart play by Funky. He's also committing with a third command center as he's doing this drop. And I think we're going to see some roasted SCVs.
Looks like that is indeed what's going to be happening. 2 are going down, 3, and I believe only 3.
Ooh.
But he's had a total of 5 workers killed, so he might have killed a little bit more in there. Not a whole lot, but at this point, every little bit the Funky bit does puts him further and further ahead. I mean, he's already got a 50 supply lead at this point, and taking a third base behind it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the words of Artosis, when you're ahead, get more ahead. And that's exactly what he's doing.
And if you're behind, you need to do something to put yourself back into the matchup. And I think that's one thing that Johan can do right now. Drop play, maybe? A couple of Marines in the main base of your opponent can be really annoying, especially when there aren't turrets to defend against it. So maybe a drop play into the main base forces units back, maybe push a small force into the third base, but he needs to get damage done, especially in the economic factor against Funky, because otherwise Funky's just going to take this.
Agreed. And I think scouting again would definitely benefit Johan. Funky's been doing pretty good, kind of juking in and out with the medevac, and also using some scans. And now the third base is complete. I'm gonna say probably a planetary. Nope. Orbital.
I don't necessarily agree with planetaries at bases, like for the base of the minerals, unless you're taking a really aggressive expansion. Some maps where you have to be against your opponent, like in a ZVT or something, planetaries are a good idea. But I think that if you're going to get planetaries, you might as well pop down a command center around your bases when you have the minerals floating, and then you can just have a orbital and a planetary. Best of both worlds.
Sense. Yep. And we get to see that both Johan and Funky are getting their 1-1 stim for Funky. And combat shields for Yohan. Does Yohan have
That's a
stim? Nope.
that's a really late stim.
It is. Well, neither of these players have it, so I guess it's okay.
Well, he's going to take the advantage. I believe he has that +1 finishing up a little bit behind, but he is also getting the combat shields behind it. And with the stim, that's just going to put himself into a bit of a better position. The problem for Funky right now is the siege tanks on the high ground. That's what he's going to have to deal with to try to get into this natural expansion. Or, well, hold that thought. We're going to have a little bit of drop play coming up here. Is going to get a couple of more SCVs, and Funky is going to be putting himself on the map, forcing his opponent not to feel too safe. And yeah, he's probably going to lose these Hellions, but he was able to get six workers up in that main base again, and every worker counts right now here from Yohan. And I mean, looking over the Harvester tab, his opponent has him is ahead by over 30 Harvesters at this point.
Yeah, almost 40.
Which is just not a good point to be in. I think in terms of Harvesters, Funky's getting to the point where he's in a decent position there. He needs to start working on his mules and his army especially, but it's not like his army is really behind in any regard. In fact, it's miles ahead of Yohan right now.
Yeah, and I think that scan that Yohan saw, 2 engineering bays, the army already down, and then a bunch of barracks with just Marines hanging around. It's not looking too good for good old Yohan Sebastian. So
The one thing I can say about the army, about Yohan in his favor, is that he is going up against a Marine-centric army. He's going against Marine tank, and Marines take quite a bit of damage from siege tank fire, and at least he has that ahead of him, and he's also getting marauders back home. I'm not sure how much it's going to help with this army that's pushing out now, though.
yeah, look at this push. I mean, everything's doubled. Army supply, worker supply. I mean, look at that medevac count. It is outrageous.
That is a beautiful amount of medevacs, honestly, especially with how many Marines you have in this army. Really good. This is a problem I've seen a lot of Terrans players, especially in low leagues, have, is that they don't have the proper medevac count for their units. They only have 3 or 4 to a maxed out army, and that's not very good because you're not going to be getting the banging for the buck for your bio.
Oh, nice. And while he's doing this push, he is once again expanding. He's throwing down a command center for the gold base and also another orbital. Where is that thing?
It's over here. It's flying. There's a command center flying over, and there's another command center down over to that third base. I don't know where that orbital is, though. But definitely following the old Day 9 motto of expand when you attack. Oh my gosh! Marines taking a few blasts of siege tanks to the face. Not necessarily all that good.
Looks like that was a bit of a one-sided fight until he scanned up. Uh-oh. Funky, what are you doing, bud?
He's going up into the natural expansion, and he...
Oh, yeah, he's got enough stuff.
Yeah, he's definitely got enough to be able to break through this. And Yohan, he's in a little bit of trouble here.
Yeah, and if this were even teams, I think this would have been a terrible decision, but because he has so many Marines and all the medevacs, he could just easily push up.
Well, not to mention the fact that he's going up onto not 1 additional base, but 2 additional bases. Even if this attack fails, he's going to be ahead so far in the economy. In fact, he might be a little bit over Harvesters at this point. Normally in Terran, you don't want to get up above 70 to 75 because you also have the mules to consider. So, definitely getting a little bit over Harvestered, but really, populated is better than not having the SCVs at all.
Yeah, and that natural is gone. The buildings left, the production buildings left for Yohan is very limited. There's absolutely no barracks on the field for him. I don't see... I mean, I'm expecting GG being typed relatively soon here.
Well, Yohan is behind 3 bases. He's behind 40 Harvesters right now. 43 to be exact. And Funky is just going to be able to outproduce him at this point. I mean, he already has 183 supply after losing his entire army over there.
Yeah. I mean, higher upgrades. I guess the upgrades are actually somewhat even keel.
But 2-1 with 1 in the siege tanks against 1-1-1. So that's not all that bad. It could be a lot worse. But really, the upgrades aren't going to save him at this point. If he was on 3 or 4 base, maybe it would save him, but not at this point. That siege tank, man.
Yep. Now getting 3-2, Funky is in a commanding lead. He's already put down some harvesters, some mules down the bottom right base, and of course he's got a saturation down on the gold base.
Which is going to be going majorly in his favor. I mean, economy is 3,000 right now to 600. That makes a little bit of a difference there. One thing I can say to Funky, though, is that I would love to see him drop down more production facilities, aka barracks, to start working on getting this bank down a little bit.
Or at least continue producing, because he does have, just in his main, 8 barracks. With 3 more.
Well, he'd have to like completely max out an army for those with those 8 barracks in order to really work on the money. I mean, barracks,
200.
CCs, both would be really good at this point to get that bank down. I mean, it's obvious at this point he's probably going to win the game, but just something for future games where it's not necessarily so one-sided.
Mm-hmm. And he's got all these medevacs, Yohan. I'm sure he can do something with them. Do a single drop with 9 medevacs with 1 siege tank. I think that'd be great.
Drops really aren't probably the best idea at this point because he needs all the forces he can to defend his base, but at this point really doesn't matter. And there goes Yohan just leaving.
No GG. And that was a joke.
It was kind of an extremely one-sided game. So what's one thing you think we can learn from this, Rick?
Well, I'd say follow Funky's play. I think that was pretty excellent. He had his macro down to a T, constantly producing, constantly making workers, and scouting. Perhaps maybe a little bit more scouting. And then Yohan, well, he scanned, but there was absolutely no scouting.
Once or twice, maybe, scanning the main base. And I think that the biggest thing we can learn from Yohan's side of things is it's so easy to feel like you're trapped within your 2 bases. But the problem is, if you get to the point where you feel like you're trapped within 2 bases, and you allow your opponent to keep you on 2 bases while they're expanding freely like we've seen Funky do, and you're not doing anything to return the favor to get some economic damage done on the other side of things, then suddenly now you're going from, I'm okay for 2 base, into, oh my gosh, I'm 30 to 40 harvesters behind.
Yep, exactly. And you got to remember, if your opponent is not attacking you, he's probably building up an army, or he's putting down another base, which means that you gotta abuse that somehow. So
especially when you're behind.
Yeah. Yep.
I was going to say something else. Oh yeah, bank from Funky. Obviously, I think that's one of the biggest things that he could learn to do is get that down, drop down some barracks when you get up to that point. You can always get more CCs because planetaries are good. More mules are always good. Scanning capabilities, stuff like that, always a good idea to keep up on that, as well as keeping up with your production. Did pretty well on that, but eventually you're maxed out and you can't really do a whole bunch about it. And I have this problem too as a player, that once I get maxed out, I start floating, and everybody has this problem of floating because there's a point at the end of the game when you don't have any other upgrades to give and stuff like that, where you always have that problem a little bit of how to spend your money. But for Terran, I think it's probably the easiest because your CCs they're just so easy to be made efficient.
Well, there's one thing Funky did that I was a little uncertain why he kept doing, but and around his production facilities, especially, there were just Marines and units and everything else that he could have easily clicked on or rallied away and continued pushing.
Oh, we had a fusion core behind it, by the way.
Smart guy.
Battle cruisers are always a good thing to do. All right, folks, I believe that's going to be it. I will be putting Rick's stuff down in the description below, so go ahead, check him out. Appreciate him coming on and helping me once again.
Hey, man. My pleasure.
So one real quick announcement, folks, before we sign off. On this Friday and Saturday at 7:30 Central Start Time, I will be hosting my tournament. It is open to anybody of any level to play. All you need to do is send me send me your email. Send me your league, send me your race, and send me your character, the account thing. You know what I'm talking about that you will be using in the tournament. And it is still open for registration. I believe we have 3 or 4 more spots to make a bracket of 8. at this point, I don't think we're gonna make the rocket of 16 that I wanted to initially, but it is what it is. So I believe that's everything, unless you have anything more to say.
No, tune in, and that's 6:30 for people who live on the West Coast. I'm not
And
gonna say
it's 4:30, I believe, for people living on the East Coast.
Oh, did I say 6:30? Maybe it's 8:30.
Uh,
Yeah, it's 8:30 West Coast.
yeah,
I think I'm an hour ahead.
I believe people on the West Coast are 2 hours. I'm 2 hours ahead of them. I believe because It's like 11:30 here, and I think it's like 10:30 over where you're at.
Oh,
Or
really? Here, let me double check here. It is 9:40.
okay.
Okay.
So yeah, it's like 10, 11:40 over here. Uh, anyways, this is kind of rambling on about time differences and stuff. If you need to go Google up a clock and go through that kind of stuff. Uh, so this has been ZookaMan and Rick,
Adios.
and we'll see you on the next cast.